All right, here we go. Today we have legendary boxing trainer Teddy Atlas. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a nice studio you got here. You're not in it, but I can take my word for it. It's nice.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, you have a very interesting story, but I want to start at the very beginning. So you grew up in Staten Island.
Yes, sir. I did. Staten Island, New York, one of the 5 boroughs. It used to be greener than it is now, but it's still the greener of the 5 boroughs. I believe it is anyway, but not quite as green as it used to be.
Okay, and your dad's a doctor.
Yes, my father was a doctor and a builder. We grew up on Grimes Hill, which overlooked where the bridge wound up being built of Verrazano. It was a nice area. We were very fortunate that we had a good father who worked hard because he came from a very, very poor background. And so we were fortunate to grow up in a nice place.
Okay, but even though you grew up in this nice area with a doctor father, you started getting into a lot of trouble when you were a kid.
We lived in a place in Grimes Hill where, obviously, as it suggests, it was a hill. And down the hill was a neighborhood that was a tough neighborhood. It had projects. It was Stapleton. And most people would like to get up the hill. And I wanted to get down the hill. And I did. I wound up, and maybe in some ways figuratively too, in life, because although I should hold off on that, because I went down the hill where there was a different life and I guess a lesser life than was supposedly on top of the hill, and more problems in that life. But I went to it myself. I wasn't pulled toward it. I pulled myself towards it.
Well, you dropped out of school your senior year, and then in Stapleton, like you just mentioned, there was a situation with a knife.
Yeah, it took a minute to get there, but if we're going to jump and catapult to there, which obviously I understand, it didn't, I didn't go down to Stapleton and then a knife showed up and stabbed me in the face. Obviously, I was hanging out there for years. I had friendships, like I said, and I was look, I'm not even going to say I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, because from a physical standpoint, obviously I was. I was down there, I was with a friend, Billy, he was older than me, and he grew up in the projects, and as I said, we became close. And he was driving a car, and we got cut off, and we cut them off back, and then they cut us off back, and all that, stupid stuff. Got out of the car, started fighting, and I'm not going to make myself Captain America and say, hey, I was doing this and doing that, but I was doing what you're supposed to do. I was hitting people that were coming at me in those kind of circumstances. But I still remember one of them went into his pocket, and even under that chaos, you know what that is. You know what that means. Obviously, he's not coming out of there with like a handkerchief to rub his nose. And when he came out with the knife, the funny thing, not that there's anything funny in this story, but I recognized the knife. Like, things do slow down sometimes. And I recognized the knife because on the corner where we were hanging out back in those days, there was a cheap knife called a 007, and a lot of guys used to carry it. And I never carried a knife. I didn't have a knife on me. But I remember friends of mine, they would show me how to flick it. They were all into flicking it open. That was the thing about the 007. If you learned with the wrist and you got the right wrist action, you could flick it right open. Not a switchblade. You had to do it yourself manually. So it was kind of like a thing, and you think you're cool, whatever, and you flick the knife. So I actually remember when I saw it, hey, that's a 007. And, what did I start this conversation with? Choices. You have a choice. What are you going to do? You're going to try to get out of there, or you're going to do something else. And again, I'm not Captain America. They're like, oh, brave, I stayed there. First of all, it wasn't brave. It was instinctive. I'm not going to give myself credit. It was just like my instinct, my thought, my choice at that time was, if I say here, he's going to obviously stab me. If I get to him, I could get to him maybe before he does this, the flick. So I did. We were only good at flicking it open. This guy was good at flicking it and coming right down with one move. So he came down with the knife and he cut me. Obviously, we know that. And, that was that situation up to that point.
Well, you got 400 stitches from that cut?
Yeah, 200 inside, 200 out. That's what they did. It's like surgery. I remember telling a cop, just call Dr. Atlas. Everything, don't worry about it. I just call Dr. Atlas. And they would tell me, don't talk, and my father was a well-known doctor. So I remember the cops actually acknowledging, we know your father. And, but we don't have time. And we get there, and they came out, they came out to meet the stretcher, the doctors, and they pulled me in, and then I remember seeing lights, obviously, the surgical lights. And again, I was calm, and I remember the last thing I said before, obviously they put me out. I didn't mean to insult the guy that was going to put 400 stitches in my freaking face, but I said to him, get Dr. Atlas. He'll take care of it. I don't know if I said he's better, but I hope I didn't say he's better. I wouldn't have gotten too good a job. But I said he's the best. And the doctor, he said, your father is a great doctor. And he kind of said what I guess the cop said. He said, we just don't have time, but we're going to take care of you. And then that was it. I was asleep. And the rest, was being done to me while I didn't realize.
This is a horrific injury and a lifetime injury, essentially. Did you ever find out who did it? Did you ever try to find out? Did you ever?
I never. It's funny you asked that because, it was somebody that turns out lived in the projects. And, I never talked about this really. You know what? I don't know. What's the matter? I found out it was a guy named Charlie Wilson. I don't give a frick. And it's 400 years ago, but whatever. And turned out that he had, they, I don't know if they grabbed him connected to this. I guess they did. But he had shot a kid. He had been out on, I don't know if it was bail or he had maybe, was previous sentence, because I don't want to say things that I'm not 100% accurate. I just know that he had shot a kid, and the kid lived, but he had shot a kid, so he wasn't a guy you'd be looking to go to dinner with, and I guess, and all that, and he he wound up not doing any time for this, but I didn't pursue that from a legal standpoint, to be frank about it. What I did pursue was trying to find them. And again, I avoided this, but some friends that were able to figure out where he was, one night, and he was in an apartment, and we were gonna go there, and I don't think I need to tell you what we were going there for. And it turned out at the last second that we realized there were kids in the apartment. So we called it off.